People, ALP2000 right back at you with another video. Yes, welcome back to another edition of Leslie Chambers Kaiju Reviews on behalf of Collect All Monsters. And this thing is so amazing. I'm gonna get that out the way right now, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to get this review out before the year is over. Can you believe it? At the time of this recording, we got a few more days, a handful of days before this glorious year of 2022 is over. And I have to say that this year was really a cool year, especially for me personally. And ironically, this was one of the best figure releases as far as Kaiju collectibles of the entire year, you know what I'm saying? It was one of the most anticipated by a lot of folks. And now that we got it in our hands, it was well worth the wait. So without further ado, let's dive head first into this awesome X-Plus 30cm Favorite Sculptors Line review. And today we're taking a look at the X-Plus Favorite Sculptors Line 30cm Rig Exclusive Edition of everybody's favorite flying, dangerous, smoggy monster, Hedra. Yes. Basically super cool appearance in the super cool Godzilla campy flip from 1971, Godzilla vs. Hedra, aka Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. And as you can see, I have the beautiful figure, or should I say figures here, because this is the Rick, and it comes with multiple pieces along with the main monster of the flying Hedra. Awesome. This is great. You get so much with this release. More on that momentarily. So, you know, we do things around here. Let's get up close and personal with the packaging before we get into the figure. And here's a picture of the box, you know, with the great colorful artwork on the box, like we normally see with 30cm figures, quite frankly, and or the Sakai's, you know. And you have the picture of the figure, you know, the massive figure on the front of the box, quite frankly. Favorite Sculptors Line, you know, Japanese text of his name, Hedra. And what's even cooler, at the bottom of the box, you have the Japanese title of the film, Godzilla vs. Hedra, at the bottom. So again, cool artwork, and ironically for a great, cool figure. Yes. But it's not about the artwork, it's about the figure. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is the X-Plus Favorite Sculptors Line 30cm flying version of Hedra, Rick Exclusive Edition. Oh my God, I'm so glad I have this figure in my collection. Yes. Now here's the backstory on how we got this figure. All right. Now, it first was shown, I want to say, at the Super Festival show back in April of this year, 2022. And it kind of came out of nowhere, quite frankly. Now, what was noteworthy about that show, that was the first time that we saw the X-Plus 25cm 2019 King Ghidorah or Monster Zero figure. We saw a fully painted version of that figure at that show. Now, it was teased at Winter Wonder Festival back in February of this year, if I'm not mistaken. Then a couple months later at Super Festival, they showed basically the fully painted figure in all its glory, you know what I'm saying? But alongside him on that table was this guy. And again, it just came out of nowhere. Like, we didn't know this thing was coming. And I love when X-Plus does stuff like that. When they bring out figures and they don't tease it, they just drop it at a random show, and it got pretty much everybody buzzing. Now, of course, a lot of people were really happy that we finally got to see, or they finally got to saw the King Ghidorah. But for us Showa fans, or for us Hedra fans, this was a nice thing to see as well. You know what I'm saying? And it came up for pre-order in June, and it got in collectors' hands, I want to say late November going to early December of this year. One of the last big releases of this year. And the second Favorite Sculptors Line release of this year, behind the awesome Hedorah vs. Godzilla set that came out, I want to say, in August or September. But again, this is a great set. And if you're a fan of the movie, honestly, Rick is the only option that you had to go for this set. Now, the set that came with just Hedra, you know, the Hedra by itself on top of the base or whatever. The Rick not only came with Hedra, the base or whatever, it also came with the eye patch that you can put on the flying version of Hedra. It also came with the microscopic tadpole version of Hedra in this cool Petri dish that we saw in the movie. and it came with a mini version of the swimming Hedra. So again, if you're a fan of this movie or a fan of the monster itself, Rick was the only option to go, quite frankly. And I like that. And I like that they gave us these Rick options versus giving us the tried and true light up. And again, I know a lot of us are sick of light ups and we're sick of X-Plus going to that well too many times over. But when they give us these small mini accessories that are basically artifacts from the film itself, I'll actually like that better. And I'm glad that they did that with this release, quite frankly. Now, again, this is from the Favorite Sculptors line, and this sculpt was taken from Resin Chef, and this is the first time that X-Plus has taken anything from Resin Chef. Again, Resin Chef is another cool model kit company, no different than Monster 28, Goro, Sakai, Inaway Arch, you know what I'm saying? Just a great model kit company, and I hope they will go back to Resin Chef for future sculpts to put into the Favorite Sculptors line. I'll touch on that momentarily. But again, this was taken from a Resin Chef sculpt, as well as the tadpole version of Hedra and the swimming version of Hedra. And ironically, all three versions of Hedra here were released at separate times. And if you go to the Kaiju Kids website, you know what I'm talking about. Now, the tadpole version with the Petri dish, that came out, I want to say, in 2006. The main flying form of Hedra came out in 2008, and the swimming form of Hedra came out in 2018. So basically, they just tracked all these pieces down and put them all together in this combined set. And it's really, 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 really cool, especially the one with the Petri dish, you know what I'm saying? Because when you see that, it reminds you of the film, because that's exactly what we saw in the film. So again, they packed so many different accessories with Hedra. And you know what? We've seen it before. Like the 25 centimeter final form of Hedra, that came with not only glitter on the figure, it came with alternate arms, 2 different light ups. You know what I'm saying? It's like and an eye patch, coincidentally. So they loaded everything up in that version of Hedra, and they basically repeated history with this version of Hedra. And so this made for a solid release. Yes, yes, yes. And again, if you're a fan of this movie, Rick was the only option for this, and I'm glad that they did all of that and compacted it into this awesome release. Yes, yes, yes. And again, that's it with the backstory, with the packaging. So again, let's get up close and personal with this guy. Now, before we go into the main event, which will be Hedra, the flying form of Hedra, let's start off with the base right fast before we go into the accessories and then back into Hedra. Now, it comes with this base. Now, it's a bland base, and I've seen some people actually have an issue with this base, saying that it is bland and that they wish X-Plus would have done something more elaborate with the base, which I can understand. And I actually don't have a problem with the base, because honestly, with the kit actually came with this base anyway, quite frankly. Now, you can argue that X-Plus could have done more with this base, right? Because they did that with the Favorite Sculptors Line Hedra set that I talked about earlier. Because when they brought that kit out and put it in the vinyl form, the original kit didn't come with the base, right? But X-Plus provided a super cool, awesome base, right? And they just whipped it up, and it was a great, 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 great base to add to the overall presentation of seeing both Hedra and Godzilla fighting. Now, you could argue they probably could have done the same thing with Hedra here, by not giving us this bland base. But again, it doesn't bother me, because quite frankly, we get so much with this figure, especially if you go with the eye patch, with the other multiple forms of Hedra, along with the main version of Hedra, that this base being bland doesn't really bother me. It doesn't really bother me at all. But I actually have another base that I put along with this Hedra. As a matter of fact, let me bring it up right now. Look at that. Look at that. Ain't that an awesome base? Oh my God. And let me get into the backstory about this base. Now, this base actually came with, coincidentally, another Resin Chef model kit, the most recently released 1972 King Ghidorah from Godzilla vs. Gigan, right? That was a kit that came out recently from Resin Chef, and this base actually came with King Ghidorah. And I had to send it off to my great friend and modeler extraordinaire, Marcellus Winters. You've heard his name on my channel a few times before. Again, a great, 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 great artist that's now coming to his own as one of the go-to artists in our community when it comes to building and painting model kits. And I had the King Ghidorah kit sent off to him. And again, I was taking notice of the reviews of Hedra and how some people were really having an issue with the base. And it really got my mind to thinking. And I asked Marcellus, was there a way could he rig this base where I could put either Hedra or King Ghidorah on this base to kind of alternate between the two monsters on top of the base, right? And he said he would look into it. And he actually whipped this up. You know, he did some alterations to the base, right? But while doing so, he found out that he could only make the base to accommodate one monster, either King Ghidorah or Hedra. And I decided, you know what? Let's do Hedra. Because, again, this is an awesome base. The oil refinery, battered oil refinery base. You know, you see, like, the rubble and the oil refinery. Because, again, this version of Hedra did attack an oil refinery. Kind of like King Ghidorah in the next film, quite frankly. But when you put Hedra on top of this base, it makes it even more spectacular. So I can understand why some people wish that X-Plus would have done a little bit more in terms of the base here. But again, it doesn't really bother me, but I'm glad I had this option where I put this Hedra on top of the base here. And honestly, you know what? Another reason why I don't really fault X-Plus for doing the whole bland, you know, base route, you know, whatever, is the fact that, you know, at some point they're going to reissue this thing. Because X-Plus do a lot of reissues, right? They have been known to reissue a lot of figures, right? And there may be some people that kind of like missed out on this figure. So I actually could see X-Plus reissuing Hedra on top of more an elaborate base to really give them more money. You don't want to throw everything all out at one time. You know, that's like a good business practice, you know what I'm saying? So again, I think X-Plus will probably reissue this and probably give us a more elaborate base. So again, between the base being bland, between me getting this base is why I don't really have an issue with the base being bland. But I'm glad Marcellus whipped this up because again, this is so great. This base is so great. Now let's go into the accessories. Now let's start with the first accessory. It comes with an eye patch that you can place over Hedra's left eye. His left eye, because remember, Hedra does get an eye patch in the film. Godzilla actually punches out the eye in the final form of Hedra, but remember, Hedra at that point can alternate between the final form as well as the flying form. And I actually like that they took that much attention to detail, because they could very easily, like, whenever Hedra, after he gets his damaged eye, right, and when he reverts back to his flying form, they could have easily not had an eye patch there, but they did to show that, you know, there's continuity between the two monsters, that it is the same monster. So again, you have this eye patch that you can put on top of the eye here with Hedra, and it looks really great. The next Rick accessory is the microscopic tadpole version of Hedra that comes in this cool Petri dish. And the dish is, I would say, it's glass. It has a glass feel to it, quite frankly. Again, this is basically what we saw in the beginning of the film. But, you know, before Hedra starts attacking Japan, and we start getting these sightings of these smaller forms of Hedra, and then it's revealed that all these smaller forms of Hedra can combine to create a gigantic version of Hedra. But basically, this is the first form of Hedra. If you really think about it, it's the first form of Hedra, and the fact it comes in this dish, it looks really good. It has a glossy finish on the monster, quite frankly. It has a glossy finish, and I really do like that. I really do. Now let's go to the next form, which is the swimming form. The swimming form of Hedra. Oh, God. And let me just tell you, when I first watched this film, now Hedra already looks creepy enough in the various scenes that we see the monster in the film. But I have to say, the one that creeped me out the most was the swimming one. I don't know why. It's like that picture after he attacks the two ships, right? And they show that still photo of Hedra looking back in the camera, and he's rising in the water, or he's swimming in the water. That still photo of Hedra with the eyes just peering over the murky water. For some reason, that always really just didn't sit well with me. That one really scared the crap out of me. You know what I'm saying? The flying one is kind of creepy looking too. But out of all of them, I would have to say that the swimming one that we see attack the ships, as well as attack, you know, the child and his father, you know, in the early goings of the film, I have to say that one to me is the creepier looking one. And again, they got it right with this version of Hedra. Again, this was taken from a model kit, came out in 2018, I believe. And they really got it right, you know, with the color on the monster, you know, whatever. It's not a glossy finish like the first form of Hedra, but it really looks good. And the eyes, oh my God, the eyes. That's one thing about Hedra. He has those creepy looking eyes regardless of the form that he's in. And again, I have to say, out of all of them, this one has the creepier looking eyes. Just my opinion, you know. But it's a good size figure, you know what I'm saying? It's a natural, you know, evolution of the character or the monster, you know, whatever. and it looks really, really, really good. So between the base, or this base I have right here, the eye patch, the tadpole form of Hedra in the pastry dish, as well as the swimming form of Hedra, again proves that the rig option was the only way to go with this figure, especially if you're a fan of Hedra. Now, speaking of Hedra, let's go towards the main event with the flying version of Hedra. Again, this was the last form that we pretty much needed. Now, mind you, this is not the first time that X-Plus has put out a flying version of Hedra. They put out a mini replica version, flying version of Hedra that came with the original 30 centimeter final form of Hedra, right? There was a rig accessory for that figure, as well as an eye patch for that Hedra, right? But we never had an in-scale version of the flying Hedra up until now. And actually, when I saw this kit, because I did see this kit a long time ago, I forgot what year it was, but I did see this kit from Resin Chef, and actually somebody I think installed LED lights in the eyes, which looked really, really cool. And I said to myself, you know what, that would be cool if X-Plus got their hands on that and put it on their roster. But yet here we are, you know what I'm saying? And this thing is really, really, really cool. When I opened up the box for the first time, I had no idea this thing was gonna be big as it was. But it's really, really massive. You know, the sculpt of the monster is really, really cool, where you're looking from above or below. It just, again, it looks just like the flying monster in the film. Looks really, really good. The sculpt is amazing, kind of like a stingray type of shape, quite frankly. And you have the sharp points on the outskirts of the monster, you know, whatever. And it looks really, really good. You know, the tail on the back end looks really, really good. Oh my God, the sculpt is amazing. The eyes, oh God, the eyes, the creepy eyes of Hedra. Oh God, this thing is so amazing. It really, really is. Not much to it because, again, it's a wide flying monster. You know, it doesn't have like arms or a leg or a tail or a dorsal plate. Well, it does have a tail, but it's not a complicated monster like a Godzilla or a Gigan or a King Ghidorah, right? But again, the sculpt is phenomenal. The sculpt is phenomenal. Again, Resin Chef, they did their thing when they first made this kit, and X-Plus has got it right with their vinyl interpretation of it. Now let's go towards the paint job. Again, the paint job looks awesome. You know, it has that standard grayish sludge colors that we associate with Hedra on the majority of the body. But on the top of the body, you know, you have the various yellows and the reds, you know, whatever, which is very, very similar to what we see with the 30 centimeter final form of Hedra. Because again, there's a kinship between two monsters. You know what I'm saying? Because again, we saw the final form of Hedra alternate between that form and this form. And the fact that you see these colors, you know, the sulfuric yellow, the sulfuric acid colors of the yellow and the red colors, you know, it just basically, it creates a synergy between the two monsters, you know what I'm saying? And I really do enjoy that. The red eyes, oh my God, just everything about this figure is really, really cool. And again, it was really needed. Because again, we've been asking for a flying form of Hedra, and now pretty much every single form that we saw in the movie now has a proper representation on the X-Plus roster, and you'll see that in the size comparison when I bring in all the Hedras together for that size comparison. So again, from the base, the original base, because I have no problem with the original base, quite frankly, but moving forward, I will more likely use this base. So between this base, between Hedra here, the eye patch, the other forms of Hedra, the tadpole, and a swimmer form, again, this was a solid release. Yes, yes, yes. I don't see this figure winning figure of the year, because I think the Hedorah set will win that. But this was a nice release to get in this year. You know what I'm saying? It's not as grand as the Hedorah set, but it's a great figure nonetheless. So you can find one for a great price. Again, go for the rig, especially if you're a fan of the film. Go for the rig, and I promise you, you will enjoy this set. And if you have the other forms of Hedra, courtesy of X-Plus, put them all together, and you have the complete evolution of Hedra. And speaking of that, let's go to that first size comparison right now, where I'll bring in all the other forms of Hedra, courtesy of X-Plus, and bring them all in this size comparison with all these versions of Hedra. So let's go with that first size comparison, or Hedra comparison. Okay, right, folks, here we are with the first size comparison, or should I say the Hedra evolution size comparison, with pretty much every single version of Hedra that X-Plus has ever done, all in this one shot right here. So let's go from left to right. To the far left, we have the X-Plus 25 centimeter crawling version of Hedra on all fours, and it's made of soft vinyl. That was a cool version of Hedra. Of course, the man in the hour up above him, you know, the flying version of Hedra with the eye patch, sporting the eye patch. Yes, yes, yes. Then we have the swimmer. Then we had the tadpole. Then we had the 30 centimeter humongous final form of Hedra, Rick exclusive, that comes with light up eyes. Yes, yes, yes. And finally, we have the 25 centimeter landing version of Hedra. So again, pretty much every single version of Hedra that we have seen in the movie, that we see in the movie, is all represented right here. This is great. This is really, really great. And actually, I'm actually fine with the fact that, again, the crawling form and the landing form are in the 25 centimeter scale, and the flying form and the final form are in the 30 centimeter scale, versus having all monsters in the same scale. But again, when you think about it, Hedra, grew from a small size and he naturally got bigger, quite frankly. So the mixtures of the scales to simulate the natural growth of the monster, I think, is better when you have two separate scales, quite frankly. So I don't think that we need a 30 centimeter version of the crawling form or the landing form. I think for size comparison purposes, this is what you need right here, in my opinion. Now, you're probably wondering, how will I rank them? Like, far as like my most favorite to my least favorite. Well, let's see. My personal favorite will always be the final form, 30 centimeter version. Like, that will always be my favorite version of Hedra. If they make a gigantic, that probably would knock him off the top spot, quite frankly. But the 30 centimeter will always be my favorite. And again, like I said just now, this is the Rick version, the second Rick version. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, the first Rick version came with an eye patch and a small mini replica of the flying version of Hedra. But this second reissue came with light up eyes. And again, I know we're sick of light ups, but that's a light up that actually is really, really cool. And it's perfect for this particular monster. So that will be my favorite. The second one, my second favorite, which is kind of weird, and I don't know why, but I actually love the crawling all fours form. The soft vinyl squishy soft one. I don't know why. Like, I just love that one for some reason. I can't put a finger on it. I can't give you a reason. I just find him to be cool. So that would be my second favorite. My third favorite would be the flying one, hands down. Like, I love that thing. I really, really do. But again, I love the crawling form, at least the on all fours form more. But yes, the flying form would be my third. And the fourth would be the landing version. He looks really cool, really menacing with the eyes. And then lastly, or at least the final two, will be the swimmer as well as the tadpole form. So that's how I will rank my Hedras from my most favorite to my least favorite. The 30 centimeter final form, the 25 centimeter crawling on all fours form, the flying form, the landing form, the swimmer form, and the tadpole form. And that's how I rank my Hedras. But again, this is so cool. So again, if you got this figure, put these figures together, and again, you get the natural evolution of the awesome Smog Monster that gave the King of the Monsters, in my opinion, the first biggest test of his career. Yes, yes, yes. So that's it with the first size comparison. You know what? I just mentioned the King of the Monsters because in this film, Hedra is not in the film by himself. He is opposed by the King of the Monsters himself, our favorite monster, Godzilla. So let's bring up a figure of Godzilla to go with this version, the flying version of Hedra, in the final size comparison. So let's do that, ladies and gentlemen, right now. Okay, folks, this is the last size comparison, and yes, alongside the flying version of Hedra, courtesy of the X-Plus Favorite Sculptors Line and Resin Chef, I have the monster that tried to take him out, to try to stop him in the film of Godzilla vs. Hedra, with the King of Monsters himself, Godzilla, with the X-Plus 30 centimeter 1968 version of Godzilla. And as you can see, they look well together, almost perfect if you will, perfectly scaled figures, if you will. Godzilla just does not look too small or too big in comparison to Hedra, and this is basically how it was in the film. Now, I know that this version of Godzilla is technically not the same version of Godzilla from Hedra, but it is in a way. It is still the Shoshinkage suit, because the 71 suit was a modified version of the 68, but you still can get away with pairing both of these figures together. And this is great. This is really, really great. Now, you probably can put the 25 centimeter 71 Godzilla from X-Plus up against Hedra, and it will still look good, but he, I think, will be too small for size comparison purposes. So really, the 68 30 centimeter here is your best and better option. But you never know, because again, this flying version of Hedra is from Resin Chef, right? And Resin Chef did actually make a 30 centimeter in scale 1971 Godzilla as a model kit. So you never know, they may bring that out into the Favorite Sculptors line. But if and when that happens, you have the 68 right here to tie you over, to put up against Hedra, to recreate the iconic moment when the flying version makes his appearance for the first time, opposing Godzilla in the oil refinery, and Godzilla's trying to stop him. So you have all that here in this size comparison. So that's pretty much it with the size comparisons of this video, with the Hedra comparison, and now with the comparison here with Godzilla. Again, this is great. So where you have Hedra displayed alone, or where you have him opposed by the King of the Monsters, it makes for a compelling piece in your collection, no question about that. So let's go with the final commentary portion of the video with my final thoughts of the X-Plus Favorite Sculptors Line 37mm flying version of Hedra. So let's do that, ladies and gentlemen, right now. Okay, folks, I'm back with my final thoughts of the X-Plus Favorite Sculptors Line 37mm flying version of Hedra. Rick exclusive edition from its epic appearance from Godzilla vs. Hedra, aka Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. 10 out of 10. This thing is so amazing. Oh my God, one of the best releases so far, or at least overall, of this year of 2022. There's no question about that. Again, if you're on the fence about going after this thing, whether you want the standard or the Rick, in my opinion, if you're a fan of the movie and of the monster himself or herself, depends on who you talk to, then you need to go for the Rick, where you get the alternate forms of Hedra. Oh my God, this is great. So once again, once you compare the flying form with the smaller forms and the other forms of Hedra from X-Plus, if you got those, and again, put them all together and you have the complete evolution of the monster. I'm glad that finally X-Plus put out the final in-scale version of Hedra that we needed to complete our collections, and it's great. And again, if you have the 25cm 71 Godzilla from X-Plus, again he might be on the smaller side, but still, look at this shot right here. It still looks good, even though Hedra is a little bit too big in comparison to Godzilla. But if you have the 68 30cm figure, that is straight up perfect. So again, whether you have the 71 or the 30cm 68, again, put it with Hedra and you have an awesome setup from the film of Godzilla vs. Hedra, aka Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. Oh my God, I'm glad I have this set. I really, really, really do. And again, thank you to Marcellus Winters for hooking me up with this base, with this awesome base, which pairs well, perfectly, in my opinion, with Hedra. Yes, it originally came with the 72 Hedorah, and it would have paired well with him. But I think with Hedra here hovering over the battle damage, or at least the damage oil refinery, makes for a better presentation than the base here, than the original base. Again, I have no problem with the original base or whatever, but this just shows that maybe X-Plus could have done a little bit more, and I don't fault those who think that way, quite frankly. But again, aside from that, this is an awesome set, no question about that. And speaking of Godzilla vs. Hedra, again, I love this film. I really do love this film. I find this film to be highly underrated, even though I know that the monster is loved by a lot of people. But a lot of people tend to dismiss the film because of its psychedelic, funky, trippy nature. I still find it to be a fun film, despite the fact that it is bizarre in so many different respects. But that's what makes the film very unique and very rewatchable, in my opinion. Now, when you think about the film Godzilla vs. Hedra, that was the first film at the time, back in 1971, that really only two monsters carried the film. Because when they started the 60s, you know, with King Kong vs. Godzilla and Mothra vs. Godzilla and the Hedorah films and all that good stuff, each film had a more increasing monster roster, where they had more monsters in the film as each film progressed, right? 3 monsters, 4 monsters, 5 monsters, or in Destroy All Monsters' case, 11 monsters. But when Hedra came around, there were only 2 monsters in the film, when you really think about it, Godzilla and Hedra. But it was so cool that Godzilla fought Hedra, but Hedra would sport a new form every time we saw Hedra. So in a way, Godzilla faced multiple monsters, even though it was the same monster. The swimming form, the crawling form, the landing form, the flying form, the final form. So the fact that Hedra sported different forms really kind of like was in scene with the films of the 60s, where you had multiple monsters in the movie. But still, the fact that only 2 monsters carry this movie, you know, Godzilla and Hedra, which is really, really cool when you really think about it. And Hedra, to me, is kind of like King Ghidorah. He was a game changer of a monster. When King Ghidorah came on the scene in 1964, again, that opened up the possibilities of alien monsters, alien races coming in to oppose Godzilla, right? And that was really, really, really cool. What's a game changer for Hedra, or why I make the case for Hedra being a game changer of a monster, is the fact that, again, I said this many times before, This was the first monster that, in my opinion, gave Godzilla the sternest test of his film career. This was the film where I really legitimately believe that this was the first time that Godzilla was going to lose or he was going to get killed. Hedra was the first monster to make me believe that, quite frankly. And when you compare Hedra and King Ghidorah, in a way, and this is coming from somebody who loves King Ghidorah, I'm a huge King Ghidorah fan, but I think the one who had the potential to be a more dangerous monster, who had a lot more going for it, was Hedra, despite the fact of him being basically in 2 films, where King Ghidorah would go on to be not only Godzilla's most popular foe, but one of the foundations or the pillars of Toho Studios when it comes to monsters. Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra, Mechagodzilla, and you have King Ghidorah, right? And King Ghidorah is big, he's massive, he's dangerous, he's savage, he comes from space, he can spew out gravity beams, all that good stuff, right? He's super massive in comparison to Godzilla. Then you have Hedra, who also comes from space, who can fly, who can shoot lasers, and who is also super massive in comparison to Godzilla. But what makes Hedra a little bit more dangerous than King Ghidorah, in my opinion, is the fact that he can also shoot out that liquid acidic muck. He can drown Godzilla in that liquid sludge muck. But also he can change his form from his main final form to his aerial form, and there was no limit to what he could do. And also with the more consumption of waste and pollution that Hedra would do, that potentially could have made him so bigger that Godzilla himself would not be able to take him down, despite the fact that there were electrodes at the end of the movie. So Hedra really had the potential to be a lot more dangerous and more of a game changer than King Ghidorah, but he was still a game changer nonetheless. And that's one of the main reasons why I go back to this film very often, because Hedra is a cool monster, a unique monster, and I love being reminded that sometimes Godzilla needs to be tested, because a lot of the times in the 60s, it was a foregone conclusion that Godzilla was going to win. But when Hedra came on the scene, he had Gigan, Mechagodzilla, and Titanosaurus, and all the other monsters from the 70s. They gave Godzilla really a stern test in his battles. It was nice to see that. It was nice to see that Godzilla's victory wasn't a foregone conclusion, or the outcome was never in doubt. But it started with Hedra. You know what I'm saying? It started with Hedra. It's one of the main reasons why I go back to this film. And I highly recommend that a lot of more folks go back to Godzilla vs. Hedra. Now, before we get up out of here, let me tell you 3 other monsters I want to see X-Plus put out in a flying form. Because again, by them doing this with Hedra, that pretty much completes the evolution of Hedra when it comes to X-Plus. And there are 3 monsters that I want to see, flying monsters I want X-Plus to produce at some way, shape, or form, whether it's a 25 centimeter or a 30 centimeter, or if they put it in the Favorite Sculptors line. I don't really care. I just want to see these 3 monsters. First and foremost, Batra. We need a 25 centimeter version of the flying version of Batra. And you know what? It's funny that we didn't see that this year, because Godzilla vs. Mothra celebrates its 30th anniversary this month, as a matter of fact. And we didn't see anything from Batra. Now, they did tease a 25 centimeter 92 Godzilla, but honestly, that was the monster I did not want to see come from this film to celebrate its anniversary. I would prefer if they'd done a flying version of Batra, but hopefully they can do that next year or in the years beyond. But we need that, because the larger form of Batra from X-Plus is a stunning figure, and I want to see that recreated in the flying version. Number 2, Destroyer. We need a flying version of Destroyer. Put it in the Favorite Sculptors line, because I think Black Dragon Studio made an awesome kit of the Flying Destroyer, and he looks great. He looks so amazing. So I would love to see Destroyer in the Favorite Sculptors line, the flying version of Destroyer, in the Favorite Sculptors line. That's my second pick. And third, this should come to no surprise to anyone, Megaguirus. Again, I know a lot of folks don't really particularly care for the film, but I think Megaguirus was one of the cool things about that film, and it's a cool monster that we don't have too many representations from, especially from X-Plus. So I would love to see X-Plus tackle a Megaguirus in the future. So those are my picks: a flying Batra, flying Destroyer, and Megaguirus. And hopefully we'll see one, if not all 3 of them, come from X-Plus in the near future. But in the meantime, as far as like flying monsters go, this is a stunning representation of the epic, dangerous, smoggy monster that we all know and love from 1971, Hedra. And again, if you're on the fence about getting this figure, whether it's the Rick or the standard, go for the Rick. But if you don't like the Rick accessories, go for the standard. Either way, get this figure in your collection, especially if you're a fan of the movie, ASAP. Yes, yes, Yeah, so that pretty much concludes my review of the X-Plus Favorite Sculptors Line 30cm Big Exclusive Edition of the flying version of Hedra. From its epic appearance from the 1971 campy Godzilla flick, Godzilla vs. Hedra, aka Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. If you have any questions, comment down in the comment section. Hit me on Facebook, be a Lesbian Chambers. We definitely go from there. Yes, once again, great piece. I'm so glad to have this figure. I'm so glad to finally get this video out, because again, I wanted to get this video out before the year 2022 is gone, and we got a handful of days before that happens, right? Because again, I thought this was, and I still think this is one of the best releases of the year of 2022, a standout release, if you will. So I wanted to get this video out. Now, in terms of my next video, I'm gonna give you a little tease or a hint with this. Now, here we talk about a monster that attacked Japan, a monster from space, no less, that attacked Japan in 1971. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about two monsters that came down from space a year later in 1972 and attacked Japan. And you know exactly what monsters I'm talking about, and they will be the subject in the next video. Yes. And hopefully I can get that video out before the year is over as well. But in the meantime, if you're on the fence again about getting this figure, especially if you're a fan of the film or the monster, again, you owe it to yourself to go after this piece. There's no question about that. Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, I finally give to you the X-Plus 30cm Favorite Sculptors Line flying version of everybody's favorite Smog Monster Hedra Rick Exclusive Edition from its appearance from 1971's Godzilla vs. Hedra. Yes. I thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see y'all again on this figure move review. All right? Y'all take it easy.